For joining us for this is our first 501c drop of the year. I'm could not be more excited to have this topic particularly happening, and I'm joined by my good friend Erin Peshoff of Vivius Studios. Hi, Erin. Thank you
Hi.
so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's always so much fun. We have such a
I
good time.
Yes, and this, I mean, again, this topic I think particularly framed at the very beginning of the year for nonprofits is huge. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll show you the topic. It wasn't my plan to advance my slide this quickly, but the part they don't tell you about resilience for work that doesn't slow down, less grit and more support. It's so interesting to me how we talk about grit all the time, particularly relative to like our kids, and these are these skills and the things that
Hmm.
we want them to develop. And then this is kind of flipping that on its head because in our nonprofit world, sometimes we are just pulling through with only grit
Yeah.
and as
Yep.
opposed to systems that make sense. So let me pause there. I'm like, you can tell how excited I am about this topic. But I do want to first welcome you to Better Unite's 501c Drop. Introduce myself. I'm Leya Simmons. I am the CEO and co-founder of Better Unite. And we have these Better Unite sessions starting this week on Tuesdays at 1:30 Central every week. So I hope that you will come back and join us later or after having been here already today. Um, let's see, where else am I going with this today? I want to tell you also that I knew there were other housekeeping items that I needed to talk about. I wanted to tell you also that you will be able to view this later. We are recording this, and these will be visible to you later as we send out the recording, and we will also post it on our website. So if you miss a part or you need to leave and come back, please do so. Take care of yourself, and all of this content will be available to you. Erin has an incredible asset for you that I'm going to post into the notes here. They will also be listed below us in the show notes as well. And if you're joining us live and you have any questions, please put those in our chat. We will go through and answer as many questions as we can get to, but we'll see how time allows. But yeah, so again, Erin, thank you again for being here. I think this just promises to be such a practical, well, first of all, thoughtful, but then really practical conversation. Erin is one of those folks that does not let you leave without, as a matter of fact, even before we were just talking, and she's like, you know what, I'm going to send you this thing that I have to help you with this one piece that I was talking about. So Erin doesn't let you leave a room without having something that's going to actually move the needle or change something for you. It's a wonderful thing to have in a person. But so yeah, today, the part they don't tell you about, you know, often this work, this nonprofit work feels really heavy, even when things are going well. And so we're going to explore today, like why that is and what can we do about it. And Erin is with Vivia Studios. It is a consultancy that helps nonprofits build systems. Systems is a keyword for this conversation today, rhythms and structures that actually support the people doing the work. Erin also brings more than 2 decades of experience working with nonprofit organizations across the country, from the scrappy grassroots teams we all love to national organizations. And now her work blends operations. Well, I guess it has for a while, right, Erin? It's
Yes, to
been
some degree,
blended.
absolutely. But now it's like really bigly.
That's really big.
Bigly? Bigly, yes.
I love it. Bigly blending operations, organizational design, and then also team development. But she does it all in this way that is uniquely Erin and uniquely human and grounded, as I said, with actionable items. So Erin being someone that's not just talking about values or like sustainability or clarity, but she builds them into teams. Because I think at the end of the day, right, Erin, resilience is not about, it's not about just pushing through, which is funny because that is kind of how I think of it, like just grit your teeth and get through it. But what we can do is hopefully design work in a way that doesn't leave, you know, all of our teams or particularly the most committed people constantly compensating for
Hmm.
things that they don't have.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Erin, thank you for being here. Let me let you have an opportunity to introduce yourself, fill in a few holes that I probably left. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Um, tell me about you.
As you mentioned, I've been in fundraising for 27 years. I started out as an accidental fundraiser, like most people do. I was getting my master's at William and Mary in higher education. I wanted to work with Greek life. And then I went and worked with students for a summer, and I realized I liked colleges, not the actual students. But luckily, my assistantship was in the annual fund, and I had this incredible mentor who taught me how to run a fundraising program and then sort of progress my way through it. I've been a consultant, I've been a systems person, I've been on every single side. I've worked with SaaS companies, and this is my opportunity to be out running Vivia. So Vivia means life. That's why I picked it. I wanted something that was about creativity and thoughtful connections and leveraging positive psychology. So I have a certificate in positive psychology. It took me 9 months to get it. There was a thesis involved and lots of reading. The book is like one of those giant binders. And that's really what I started to ground our work in. And my goal is that how do we take the complex out of some of this and make it make sense for people? Because systems are awesome. The BetterUnite's an amazing system. I actually have an opportunity to help some of my clients implement it, which is awesome. But if it doesn't serve the people who are there, or it's completely overwhelming, then it doesn't work. So my work is really about connecting those pieces and the things I love. And, since I was a kid, I've been like the organized person. I color code my science notes. When I'm having a bad day, I'll clean out a closet. When my husband comes home and there's furniture rearranged all over the house, he's like, what's wrong? So I'm just that's just my thing. And it's what's always made me happy. And so to be able to combine that with helping nonprofits do their work in the world is really, really cool.
This is incredible. I just love that. It's so satisfying to hear somebody, and I've known Erin now for quite a few years professionally, but we connect on lots of levels. And it's just so gratifying, satisfying. I don't even know what the word is, to hear somebody just move into their sweet spot, to like go into the work that really lights you up, and that you're helping everybody succeed when that happens. So I'm very excited about Vivia Studios being in the world.
Thank you. And it's such fun kismet. So Leah and I met at a conference where we were in a horrible booth situation. We're not going to mention the conference, but there was like no traffic. And we were both like trapped at our booths. And so we just sat and chatted for like basically 2 days. We were completely stuck. And so it was this moment of, it was a horrible conference, and it was in Las Vegas, which is not my jam. But we got to hang out the whole time. And so I'm really grateful for that moment having brought us together.
It's so interesting, isn't it? I know. And here we are. I don't know. It's like 6 years, 4 years, 5 years later. It's a long time. So
I think it's 6. That's insane.
That's crazy. Okay. So let's dive in. I've got some questions here. I will just let's talk about all of these pieces. Like I said, that those things that usually go unsaid. I'm always curious to talk about call out the elephant in the room. So Erin, tell me. So Erin actually proposed the title for this session that I love so much. So I wanted to ask you to kind of give us a little more context. How would you define resilience in a nonprofit context? And then compare that to how that's different from the way that we usually talk about it.
So we typically see resilience as pushing through, as like, we're resilient, we're going to do a good job no matter what's going to happen. It is going to happen. I will not fail no matter what. And what that really does is you have to push through, and that's exhausting. I don't know about you, but I know my tells when I'm exhausted. I break things. I lock myself out of the house in June when I was really just not being the best version of myself. I actually left my phone on top of my car and drove down the highway, and it fell off, and I had to go emergency get a new phone before a business trip. So those for me are the tells that I have pushed myself way too far in the name of, I want to do my job. I have important work to do in the world. It doesn't have to be like that. So what breaks it down? So what's that ability to absorb stress without everything depending on that endurance, where we can actually stop? And I was thinking about this morning. I was preparing for our call, and I remember I was a very new nonprofit baby working in DC at a law school, and I went to an AFP meeting, and this woman was talking about how she hadn't taken a salary in a year and a half because the nonprofit needed that money. And I was like, that is pushing through to the expense of who you are in the world. So how do we reframe that commitment and capacity and get honest about what we can actually accomplish, and then create the things that'll make that happen? Like, there's no way this nonprofit should not be able to pay a person to do the work, or they should probably not be doing the work. So there's a lot of expectations we put on ourselves. And I think when we do that, we start to lose who we are and we get exhausted and then we get snippy and then we're not nice to our people. And, no one wants to be around you in your house. Well, at least that's what happens to me when I get snippy. I'm not very nice. So I know that when I'm doing that, I'm not operating from a place of deep, growth and flexibility and shared load and places for recovery and repletion and depletion. I'm operating from a place of scarcity and fear, and it makes you less and less able to do your job well. So it actually has the opposite effect on us when we push like that. We don't actually end up doing the best job we could, which is really sad because most people go into this field because they want to make the world better. And so it's so upsetting to me when people are just grounding themselves, grinding into the ground.
It's so true. And it's there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if we
Yep.
can't fulfill at least that piece, just
Yep.
food, clothing, shelter, then there's a failing there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also think of I think a lot about the way that, people value whatever it is, effort, a product, or, that sort of thing. And when there is no financial value, I do think that there's less value placed upon it. And
Mm-hmm.
so even though the work of the nonprofit for your, that person that you're talking about might have been quite important, her not paying herself, in the eyes of a board or donors or whatever, they begin to just expect that work
Right.
is going to happen without any sort of compensation. So yeah, that's really, I do hear that story. We do hear about organizations that work at that level, and
Yeah.
it just feels like it's totally unsustainable is the thing that we know for sure.
Completely unsustainable and exhausting. And, does it actually serve at the end of the day the people we're trying to serve?
That's
If you can't
because there's not
establish
longevity.
right, because there's no relationships.
Mhm.
Because you can't come, and we've all done that thing. Like I was a frontline fundraiser. I know where my line is. I know these aren't actually my friends. They're donors and all of those things. But at the same time, I still want to show up as my genuine self. And when I'm so depleted, or as you said, when you think about Maslow, you're so depleted, you can't possibly show up as the best
No,
version of
it's not.
yourself.
It's humanly impossible. Like our animal human body needs those pieces to be in place.
Yep.
It's really, yeah, that's totally true. So then why is it then that in nonprofit world, the work does end up feeling really heavy, even when things seem like they're going well? Because as when I was a frontline fundraiser and I worked with smaller organizations, typically that was a kind of consistent through line. Like
Yeah.
it just never felt like success was complete. It never felt complete.
Well, the bar is always higher, right? So the disconnect in nonprofits too is, right, you've got your fundraising person or people or department or whatever. Then you've got the people who are delivering programs, whether you're at a school or a hospital or a domestic violence shelter, whatever you are, you have people delivering the work in the world. And then you have a board. And I think this is where that grit starts to come down. At least what I've seen in the past few organizations that I've had an opportunity to work with is a disconnect between the board and the actual staff and what's happening. And so, for example, when the board sets a goal that's not based in real numbers, right? Like average nonprofit grows 5 to 10% a year at max, right? These are the statistics that happen. And the board says, that's great, but we want you to raise $5 million.
Let's go
Or we want to be a
50%.
$1 billion campaign because this school did a $1 billion campaign. So therefore we should do a $1 billion campaign. Without that symbiotic relationship between the leadership and the staff and the programs people, I think that's where people start to own things that don't belong to them. So I know that you give me a goal, I want to meet that goal, whatever it is. But when the goals aren't grounded in any reality and we're not checking them against data and against numbers and against performance and against what's our pipeline look like? What is the breakdown of our potential number of donors? What does it look like here? That's when I think it starts to fall apart. So that the feeling heavy, I think, is that you're just kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop. And you'll be in a board meeting and you're like, did that person really just say that? Like, how am I going to go do that thing as a staff member? But you need the board. And so good boards, quote unquote, if you want to label them that, do that thing where everybody understands their job and they're all listening to each other. And I think it's a really hard, being a board member, I think is almost harder than being a staff member because you volunteer thinking you're going to do this great thing, you're bringing your expertise. And then you don't know all the other pieces that are happening. So how do we create that transparency across the board to be able to break it down? So it's like emotional labor and then this ambiguity of like, what's going to happen next? What does that look like? I'm a little frightened. So success adds complexity. Like you almost get more complex as you grow. So you were successful. I had one campaign year when I was at an independent school, and I went from the annual fund was at 1.7. They were long story, they dropped to 1.5. I got them back to 1.8. But what that did is put the people after me to have to make that big of a jump. And I was able to make it because it was their 100th anniversary. There were a lot of great things happening. Plus, I'm brilliant and I did a great job. I'm just kidding. Great segmentation. No, I mean, it was a perfect moment to jump. But that next group was not going to be able to jump that annual fund to then 2+ million. It wasn't going to happen because there's a lot of factors involved. So I think it's those, why did that success occur? What was that number because of? What do we actually need? Doesn't make sense. And I remember at that school in particular being told, if you don't hit this annual fund number, we're going to have to fire faculty. And that felt awful because I was like, so now I'm responsible for someone else's job, 100%. Like for their ability to bring food home to their kiddos. Like, are you serious? So I think when that effort is the glue, instead of thoughtfully creating the scaffolding, that's when it starts to happen too.
So that is okay. Amen to all of that. And the only piece I add to that too is, again, coming from the perspective of a smaller nonprofit, I think a lot of times that, board members will consider their fiduciary responsibility as oversight, as opposed to actively being involved in the fundraising component parts of it. So, they're like, hey, go raise this money. See you later at the next board meeting. And you're like, I just got hired and don't know any of these people yet. So I kind of need your relationships in here, and getting that, the crickets or the vacuum there makes life so difficult. And I have to say, I have experienced that on several boards, even the boards that would call themselves quote unquote working boards, where I think what they think that means is we're going to, and sometimes it does, I'll volunteer, or, I'm going to lead a group for whatever, but it doesn't maybe extend to helping out the fundraisers or providing that kind of realistic guidance into what the next year and what the next year's fundraising can look like. So then what are the signs that maybe the staff, we're speaking from the perspective of the staff, what are the signs that effort is compensating for a missing support or missing systems?
So I think there's several. The first one is that we keep doing the same thing over and over again. So smart people, let's say I'm going to do a very simple example. There's a PowerPoint deck, and we all know that the world shuts down when there's a board meeting because we have to recreate the deck, right? Every time. So when smart people are repeating work over and over again and just like acting like robots and not thinking about it. So are you recreating the wheel every time? Are you overthinking board meetings? Are you overthinking your pieces of work? So are smart people doing the same things and asking for the same answers? Because that means there's not a system to take care of that.
Interesting. That's such a good point.
Are leaders acting as translators or safety nets instead of getting it into your CRM and getting the record logged of what's happening with this relationship? Or even like passing on knowledge in a good way. Like, do you have a process book for your CRM? Is it boring to write a CRM process book? Yeah, it's really freaking boring.
It is.
But you know what? If you don't do it, all the work you just did gets unraveled. So I think having those policies in place, having these SOPs, when those aren't there, you're leaving people to their own devices. And personally, I believe everybody's trying to get an A. I don't think anyone shows up for work. And this is a question I'll ask people all the time. Like, do you think people are doing the best they can? And if the answer is no, it's typically like I don't trust the people around me. If the answer is yes, it means that we can do things to help them be the best they can, right? Give them the structure and the scaffolding to be successful. Progress slows down. Someone goes on maternity leave and the world shuts down. Like we've seen that happen. I don't know how to do that. Joan was the only person who knew how to do it. Okay, well, we still have to do that work, right? So we still have to report to finance. We still have to deliver on what we promised. We still have to take care of our donors. And if we don't do those things, why aren't they happening? And where is the system breaking apart? And then I think it's also constant urgency. We do, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So being able to really weed out what actually matters here? What's the work we're doing that matters? Does it matter that our napkins match? Or, right? Does it matter that so-and-so is sitting next to so-and-so? Or does it matter that we have the right people in the room, that we're closing the loop, that we don't finish an event and not do any follow-up? What are those things breaking down, right?
Erin knows my love language.
Where's our system?
I'm so obsessed with that. Yes, and you know what? How many, I mean, what would you, I can't even guess at the percentage, but it is a very high one of nonprofit and nonprofit events where the centerpiece and the napkins matching has gotten way more space in conversations than has how are we going to talk to people after this event? Like, and I know this because so often no one has had that conversation prior to the event, and generally they're not having it afterwards either. But to this point, the system's point, someone's head ends up on a chopping block because that didn't happen, because the goal didn't get met, or the goal was only considered a night of goal as opposed to everything that could possibly follow after, leaning into momentum.
Yeah, I used to think about the prospects. We all have the wheel, right? The prospects wheel. Identification, discovery, blah, 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 blah. And I tried to visualize this once and I did not do a good job. Maybe AI can help me at this point, but it's almost more like a chutes and ladders board. Like a donor journey isn't a circle. A donor journey is like, I go along here and then I go up the ladder and then this happens. And then I get busy and I'm not thinking about that organization anymore. So how are we capturing that as part of our donor journey and part of our relationship? And not everybody wants to follow the circle, right? They want to come in and out as it makes sense to them. So that donor centricity becomes an important part of it too. And how are you paying attention to those signals? And I think that's part of what we try to kind of plug and play things where it doesn't matter or it does matter. And then we don't slow down for the things that do matter. So it should be easy to repeat an event. You should be able to create a template and a prospect management system and just go, 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 go. That doesn't happen because we're like, ooh, this is much more fun because it's much more fun to pick colors. It is. Of course we want to pick colors. I love color. But what actually matters is what does it feel like to sit in that room?
That's totally true. That is a very good through line. That's that could actually be the motto for fundraising events is how do they feel when they're entering in there and then post exiting as well. So, okay. So then now we're talking about design, right? So we've got some design issues and it's much more than, as you said, everyone's trying to get an A. I mean, I really believe in nonprofit work, particularly that is 99.9% of the time a true statement. So what does it look like in practice to address the design issue?
So first thing is we need to look at the silos. How are people working right now? So I think the first thing, and I always start this way, is what is happening right now? Give me the reality. Give me what you're doing. Show me your process. What do you like? What don't you like? Let's kind of dig in here and figure out where you're stuck. For example, so there's, and I don't know how many folks have used these, but there's something at a bank called a Dropbox. And so instead of having to send all of your donation mail directly to the nonprofit, have it processed by a human who has to, and there's rules, right? One person has to open, one person, all that stuff. Instead, all of it goes directly to your bank in a special envelope. It's Dropbox. And then they send you a report and all you have to do is upload that report into your CRM. So that's one of those places where, and I've seen this, I think I've brought them in 4 or 5 times, but where I'll go to a nonprofit, they're tiny, they're understaffed, everyone's overwhelmed, but someone's literally spending an entire day opening envelopes and typing things. Right. You can spend a minimal amount a month and get that in there. So where are those friction points happening that your gut's this shouldn't be this hard? Why is this hard? There's something that's occurring here. Is it, we're making someone go get the mail every day. One place I was at had someone who literally had to drive to a PO box 45 minutes from their house to pick up the mail to process it. So an hour and a half, 3 days a week was completely wasted because they didn't want to move the PO box. So where are those things that if you gut check them, how on earth is this happening? Or super missed deadlines. That whole example of event teams who are up all night the week of an event. That should not be happening. All of that work could have been done before if we had really been thoughtful about the process. And the other thing is when people have too many disparate things on their plates too. At one organization, I was the director of annual giving. I also had to produce this like book about the school every year. It's the college. And I had to produce, like, for US News and World Report, we produced a really special report. And my job was to design the report. So like not only was I running the annual fund and doing all the work, and I was also running, like, I had my own solicitation book, all of that stuff. I literally was helping design the US News and World Report book. And I remember sitting in a hotel room in Durham, North Carolina. All the reason I'd gone to this conference is because I wanted to go see the, the Bull Durham, the baseball team. I was so excited, and I couldn't go because I had to sit in this hotel room and line edit this book. So not only was I doing a job that had nothing to do with fundraising, but I was also like, now I'm mad because now I don't care about you because you just took away this one fun thing that I was going to get to go do and get a cute hat for, So are we paying attention to like where we're stressing our people too? Like, yeah, it had to get done, but it wasn't my fault that people missed the deadlines. It was theirs. And so, at that point, I didn't know about any of this resilience stuff. I only knew to work really, really hard because I wanted my A. Instead, I think what more competence was rewarded with more work. And I think we need to look at that too.
That definitely happens. And what I'm hearing too, that you're saying is like that feeling that we all know. And I get it in my personal life too, where like, I'm like, why is this so hard? Or like these places where it's like a constant butting up against a frustration, that if you take the moment to step back and honor the fact that you're having that feeling, then you can take action to change it. I mean, and it's true, just like of our human being, animal body, we kind of move at the rate of pain, at the rate of like, what's causing so much annoyance or frustration that I'm now going to finally do something about it. But you're right. But with work, and particularly with nonprofit work, where we know we're doing all of this good, we are just, kind of executing a lot of times on autopilot, we're a small team. So everybody has to wear a bunch of hats, and lots of people have to do the stuff that they don't want to do. It's much bigger than just cleaning the toilets. Fine. Everyone needs to clean the toilets from time to time. It's a job you don't like, but it just has to be done. But, when it's a systems issue, then we can actually take steps to make changes.
Right. And even that, like, can you get a little cleaner tab that goes in your toilet back every week? What are the things that you can hack, right? There's a commercial, I think it was for like a handyman service or something, but it was so smart. And every day this woman would come in and have to like jiggle her key and her lock to get into her house.
It's exactly what I'm talking about in her personal life. Yeah.
And then one day she just called the handyman and fixed it. And then it was done and she could just get into her house. So wouldn't it be cool if we could fix the little tiny things that don't let us get into our house without like a dance,
And a frustration, and something that takes your brain down into a place that does not need to go on a daily basis every time you want to walk into your sacred space of your home. Okay. So then we've talked about toilets and locks. So why don't we go back and talk about some of the structural gaps that you're seeing in nonprofit teams that you're working for? You use some great anecdotal pieces, but like, can you maybe identify a few places, particularly, and I guess I'd even elevate it to those that are going to potentially lead to the burnout problem that we have with nonprofits. I mean, I know we're in a place where people that work for nonprofits typically only work there for 18 months. So another big, hey, please write down some of your systems flag. But yeah, so where are the places that anybody on this call could actually like look to today?
The first one is
over ignoring.
When information lives inside someone's head and it's not written down. So that's the first huge problem that I've seen over and over. Because again, someone might leave, they might move on, they might get promoted, they might just forget. Like when that stuff is not written down, when we don't take the time to write out our SOPs, it sounds so silly. But then when an SOP breaks down or something like, one of your Zap links fails or something is missing along the way, and then you scramble to find that thing. That would be one of them. I think it's that information in people's heads or on Post-it notes or only on their computer. Like, how are we sharing it? And every time I've ever gone to someone's desk and it's covered in Post-it notes, I'm like, oh no, here we go. Let's figure this out. The other one is meetings to just have a meeting. So meetings without agendas and without action steps at the end. And the note-taking that goes along with that. So many of us are virtual now. There are so many tools out there that take notes for you for free. But meetings without, this is the agenda, this is the beginning, middle, end, here's our purpose, here are our action steps, here's our timeline. And then not actually putting that in a thing. So there's not a clear project management system. There's not a clear tracker. Not everybody has to set up like a giant, project management tool, but at least at minimum, what's the checklist that's helping everyone understand the overlaps of roles? And then I think the third, and this is probably not going to be the most popular thing, but ignoring recovery cycles in fundraising, meaning we know we have to do this many mailings. December is the biggest giving month of the year. All of this needs to happen. And then to not allow your staff to come back and relax a little and breathe. I don't know if you've heard this. I'm sure you have this idea of wintering. Like we all set new goals for January, right? We have to have our goals and our timetables. And I'm guilty of it. I mean, I go whole hog on my word of the year, but that we're not allowing the slow that needs to happen in the winter. I always took off in January when I was especially annual fund, because you need to regroup so that you can come back and continue. Like nothing in nature blooms all year. Same thing. Like nothing in fundraising you can't expect, and your constituents can't get hammered over and over again. So where do you allow for recovery and a true cycle? So you've asked, we've gotten hopefully great results in December. Let's let January like bubble. Right? Yeah. Like where does that happen? So I think
maybe that follow-up part does happen. So you do honor the full cycle. So, back to our, like you do need to reach out after the event, even though the event was stressful. And then there's the recovery cycle. There's the moment, the space.
The smartest executive directors and CEOs I've seen have said that. Like if you had a huge event over the weekend, we don't want to see you till Wednesday.
I think that is honoring. I have to say that too all the time.
Yeah, because they want to keep going. They want to do a great job. What's going to happen if I don't show up? Is everyone going to miss me? Are they going to think I'm not working as hard? Yep. And then the CEOs have to do the same thing. So that's the other one. If they're even if they're working, don't send the emails, schedule them. Like give your people space to be humans again, and then allow them to come back.
Scheduling emails is maybe my favorite of our new tools that are out there. This is the most brilliant outside of the note takers. The note takers is huge as well. I really, really, really dislike meetings that don't have a concrete thing, or being asked about something that was discussed in a meandering way in a meeting. And I'm like, what did we talk about? There was something that we spoke about there. Yep. I will say I am actually currently in Australia, and January is summer. So here they have the luxury of not wintering in that post New Year's Eve. I know I had never thought about that before until you just said it, but I was like, you know what, that it works here. So if you're in Australia, ignore what Erin just said, but outside of that, you really all do. Our human cycles say, slow it down in the winter.
Slow it down, have some soup, get a candle. My New Year's resolution, part of it is I'm not wearing hard pants when I work from home anymore, meaning no jeans or things with buttons. I went and got a couple of like very lovely joggers. So I feel somewhat put together, but I am comfortable.
Yes. Erin and I are both wearing comfortable pants below what you can see right now.
Below our cuteness.
I love it. Very, very, maybe it's too much information, but it's very helpful. It is.
It's all good.
Okay. So then now we've discussed our problems. When we get into some solutions and we've implemented some of the pieces that you've talked about, what does it look like when a team has those healthy rhythms in place and the processes?
So first, you don't glorify burnout. So I think that's part of it too, is that we actually acknowledge.
Just mark that clip.
We don't glorify it, meaning we're not like, well, Susie worked all weekend and 24 hours and hasn't slept in a month. That's actually terrible. So if you do that, cease and desist from that action. I think it's staying present, slowing down before things break, actually having an environment where failing is okay. I think we're seeing that a lot with AI adoption, because AI fails all the time, right? Like it's part of the deal, but being willing to experiment and try is when some of those pieces hold the system together. So that way you're not glorifying the ability to do that. Ask me your question one more time, because I know I had more answer and I got lost in my head.
No worries. So what does it look like when a team has those healthy rhythms and processes in place?
People end work on time for the most part, right? Like they know what their workload is and what the expectations are. A lot of these great tools, Sana being one of them, ClickUp being another one, all of these project management tools that seem slightly frightening in the beginning, they actually measure workload. So you can put time estimates on everything you're doing and say, what does this actually take to produce? Which also gives you, what's the ROI on producing this? Because if we're putting people through that and we can't measure it, we can't see it, we don't know. But actually having a balanced workload, people go home on time. If we're not hitting the numbers, we know why. we're paying attention to the why. Our reporting is like consistent and even and balanced, meaning we always know what to expect, how to answer the questions, what matters. So measure the things that matter first. And I think the final one is that like we actually like each other at work. You know?
It's a
And though
really
that's
big
how
deal.
it is a really big deal, but
And
like
you
one
can
of the
tell, like when we
yeah,
just as so BetterUnite software company, but we do work with a lot of nonprofits,
yeah,
and like our account management team can spot from the jump when a team is, I mean, and I would call it unhealthy, but when the
mhm,
team is like under this inordinate strain and they don't particularly like each other, they'll gripe about each other. And I mean, it's just, it comes through. And if it's coming through to your software company, it's probably coming through to your donors.
yes. And who wants to go to work like that? Like, then you don't
And
show
then
up
there's
as your
that.
best self, or we don't help each other, right? Like, we've all had that colleague who is persnickety or challenging. And,
Mhm.
one of the great things about being a consultant is you get to go in and sort of get the airing of the grievances and understand the why, like underneath it. And maybe that's always been part of my style. I want to understand what's hurting you. Like, I'm very, very sensitive and empathic, which is great sometimes and terrible other times. But like your team knows too. And I've met a lot of your team and they have that same quality. You pull through and you're like, okay, what is going on here? And
Yeah.
I remember it was implementing Salesforce. This is before you existed. So just know that.
That's okay. We like
I was
Salesforce. We
implementing
play nicely with Salesforce.
I know it's a great tool, but I was
It is.
implementing Salesforce at a school, and the one of the like main leaders of their former software platform was she walked into a room and the entire energy changed.
Yeah.
So I knew she got there early, and I figured out what coffee she drank. So I got in, I got a coffee, and I was like, "What's happening? Like, I'm feeling like you're really hating this change." And she started crying, and she's like, "What if I'm not necessary anymore, and I'm too old to get another job, and I'm too close
Oh,
to retirement, and I'm not going to be relevant?" And it changed the whole conversation to humanize what she was doing. But it's when that like snip, you can feel it in
yeah.
conversations and meetings,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, 100%. So then that leads me to my next question exactly. So how can you tell, and you just described like the energy changing in the room. That's maybe a little squishy for some folks. So how can you tell or how can a leader, anybody, tell the difference between a people issue and a process issue?
People issues are when that's an interesting question. Let me think about that a little bit. So I think when it's a process issue, it's coming up in the amount of time things take. I
Yeah.
can't get a question answered. It takes 4 days for me to get a report that should feel simple. I don't have visibility into what's going on across the board. Things feel very
Mhm.
like choppy. I
Mhm.
think that's when it comes down to process. And people and process issues are inextricably linked
That's
because
I
people run
hear as you're
process.
saying that I'm like maybe that's not actually a great question because they are so because if everyone's trying to get an A, then it's a lot of the time a process issue. But there are those times that there's either a weak link or somebody that's having their own personal emotional response to something that then that person needs to have a different conversation.
Yeah. And I think, everybody needs to be managed differently too.
Yeah,
So
that's
managing
love
your whole
languages.
team the same way. And I got accused of it at one point. My colleague was like, I am not a grocery list because I want a list. Like, I want to know what you want from me and I want to look at it that way. She was like, I need to talk first. And I was like, this is a giant waste of time. I don't want to talk first. Right. But that's what they needed. So not all people should be managers. And I know that's not a popular opinion either, but not everybody,
Oh,
just because you're good at your job doesn't mean you should then manage other people, which is the other thing that happens to us in this field. Because in order to make more money and move up the ladder and feel important and valued, you're like, well, then I need to be a director or I need to do this or I need to do this. And so we, as employees, stop honoring what we actually like and don't like. Like, I'm just very good frontline fundraiser. I could close gifts. I knew how to do it. I hated it. And I should have been more honest with myself along the road that that's not what I want to do
yeah.
because it's the bigger title and the bigger thing. And, I was like, that's what you do. Those are the rules you follow. And so I think you also have to be sort of honest with yourself. What do I like to do and what do I hate? Because a lot of that friction comes when we're doing things that don't actually serve our genius zone, that place where we're in our best self, where we're flowing, you know?
I think also a good leader, and I hate to use that word because again, everyone's trying and we're all working on it, but those that are going to experience success as a leader are going to look for people's strengths, like
Mm-hmm.
look to no matter where they've been placed, like
Yeah.
parsing out after however much time has gone on. what that person may or may not be telling you out loud is actually their sweet spot, and then do everything you can as the leader to put them into that sweet spot. Of
Yep.
course there's parts that you have to do that you don't like. Nobody loves their job 100% of the time, but finding a way to peel away the parts that are not aligned for them and putting people into that place is so key. It's really been it's honestly not my favorite thing to do. I really find it difficult to, really like understand fully. I sometimes have a good gut for it, but I don't always. And then sometimes you have those great employees that just say out loud, they say it to you, which is wonderful. But trying to like put people into those perfect places
Yeah.
is a challenge. It's not like it's easy. None of these things that we're talking about are very simple things or simple changes to do.
Well, it's a mindset shift too. So switching
That's very
from
true.
you need to switch to a growth mindset, switching
Yeah.
into that this can grow, that a mistake isn't the end of the world, that all of those things are true. That's a skill we don't learn because we go
Yeah.
to school and we get these grades and that's what we learn how to do. There's actually, if anyone's writing this down, there's a book called Sparketypes by Jonathan Fields. He's founder of Good Life Project. I could talk about him for hours. He's amazing. But he has this quiz and your team can take it. It's called a Sparketype and it's how the work lights you up in the world. And it doesn't mean like quit your job and go become a farmer because this is where you landed. What it means is how do you incorporate that way of thinking? And the book goes through every single Sparketype. So my main one is scientist. I'm curious. I want to figure out why things work that way. I want to understand them. And then my secondary is essentialist, which means I then want to find the process to put it together, which makes a lot of sense, right? Other people are a performer or this, or there's lots of different ones, but it's a free tool. The quiz is free. The book isn't
Sparketype?
Sparketypes.
Okay, I
Mhm.
love that. We're gonna have to put that into the show notes. I actually have never heard of that, so that's
Mhm.
really amazing.
It's really fun. And the quiz is simple. You can pay for a more in-depth version and they have coaches who come in. But for those of us on scrappy nonprofit budgets, that's a good one. Same thing with Clifton Strengths. That's the other
Yeah.
one I use a lot, which is like, what are the things you actually bring? And I've done with my teams, putting it all out there and like, let's figure out where do we overlap? Where are we missing things? What do we need to do? And how do we honor that in each other?
What I love about this conversation too, Erin, is how much it is focusing on the team and the makeup of the team, as opposed to only, that being so integral and intertwined with the systems. We're not just
Mhm.
talking about bringing in these external tools or, like how can we take what we have, which is the people in the room, and really move the needle by just realigning or reimagining where folks can go. I like these things. I'm also one of those that I'm not afraid of change. Like it doesn't freak me out,
Mhm.
doesn't scare me. And I know that that's, this for your example earlier with the woman that was afraid of Salesforce, right? Like that's change. And that's a fear of what's changing. I had this yoga teacher that talked about the void, right? Like if you're asking someone to change and they're scared of the change, they cannot see the other side, even if you can see it. Like there's a void. And so there's some piece that's you talking them across the void. That's
Yeah.
like the only way to get there. So I think about that one a lot too. So can you share? I know you've shared a few stories maybe already, but is there another story that comes to you of a nonprofit that made some of these small tweaks, small changes, and saw a big difference in, I don't even mean in fundraising or output, but in the capacity or the energy in the room or the way that they were approaching things?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think it's the people who are like everybody's committed to the thing involved. So what I've seen is someone be
Mm.
like, "Hey, we're going to take on a project management system. We're actually going to do this thing," and they've started from a place of everybody share what you care about around this, right? So this organization was like, "We need project management." People were kind of freaking out because I don't want everyone to see what I'm doing all day. I don't want to write that down. What if they don't need me anymore? All those fears that bubble. And so what they did in the beginning is we went through and we were like, okay, what do we need? What don't we need? And then we asked, what are you excited about? And what are you afraid of? And the first thing we addressed was that, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of?
That's
And
really
how do we
good.
mitigate that? And I did it anonymously because I don't want people to have to feel on the spot because not everybody likes to write those things down.
Yeah.
And then we went through and we were like, okay, how do we mitigate this fear? And then where do you want to be involved? So are you excited to be part of this project? Because it's just like volunteers. We know that volunteers are more likely to give. We also know they're more likely to be part of our organization and they feel more intertwined. So when you're
Connected.
working on a project like this, giving everybody sort of a place to collaborate is important too. And, you know, I think it starts to take the place of like really bad team building. If anyone's ever been forced into a bad team building situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I don't want to get on a phone call and wear a crazy hat. I want to get on.
I don't
This
want
is
to do a
not,
trust fall. This is
I
not
don't.
pleasant for me.
Right. Or if you say this is a family, it's not a family. I have a family
Yeah.
and
We're
I
real
love
clear.
them. Right. We're good. This is not my family. This is my job. And so aligning like where those things are, where those fears are, or that's another phrase, actually, the family one that always stands out to me like, oh no, like, oh God, we've got to fix this. But it's like, let's break it down and take away, because systems aren't meant to take away like the people aspect. Same thing with AI, frankly. What they're meant to do is take the things away that are heavy and hard, that you're repeatedly doing. So I had a report I had to do for a campaign once, and every time I ran this report, I had to add in $1.81 million to every report because of how they had done the last set of campaigns. So I was like, well, what if we just fix a dummy record and add that to the campaign every time? Because it was this weird accounting thing. And it saved us hours because then we weren't forgetting to add in the 1.18 million, right? So when we do these projects, I think there's that success that's starting to see, people are leaving on time, we're hitting our goals, we have transparency. And then we have to stop at different points throughout the project. So if we're implementing something, we do a trial run of a project management system, and then we're like, okay, how's it going? Airing of the grievances. Tell me what you hate. And then it gets to the next point. So I only think people really fully adopt things when there's something in it for them and when they can see it's part of the success and that it's maintained and important to leadership. So leadership says, set up this Asana board and you do it and you do everything you're supposed to do. And then you never go back to it or report from it. Why did I just do all that work? That doesn't make any sense.
Or the leader never looks at it. Like that's the other piece, right? Like you did it for them, literally, and then they've just totally, oh, good, it's there now. Like it's like some sort of track record that's needing to be kept.
It's magical.
So what are some, so that we've talked around a few of these, but I like concise lists. So what are some mindsets, some little like tweaks, small mindset shifts that teams can make to, carry work with more ease?
So I think one of them is that belief that everyone's trying to get an A. We're all doing the best we can.
I think I'll take that one home.
That one's a big one. And I think the other one is, looking for people's strengths, right? So instead of coming at people with a place of, you're not doing this isn't happening. So we talked about that idea of strengths. And also I think it's like measuring contribution differently. So just because I'm not a major gift officer and I'm not bringing in the multi-million-dollar gifts, I still want to celebrate the fact that in the same vein that the annual fund grew by X or our systems improved by X, like all of the things make up our work, right? Are we stewarded all of our donors? How's our donor retention rate? Like all of those numbers matter. And I think one of the things we do in fundraising shops is we honor the giant gifts because those have the big
final number.
Right. So I think it's honoring all of those contributions within reason. Like you sneezed, you don't get a present, right? Like we're not talking about athletics with my children right now, like where everyone gets a trophy. Like
just showed up. Here's your
yay, participation. I think that's a piece of it. I think the other shift too is to allow yourself to be a learner, like to be
curiosity.
curious. I don't have to know everything. I have to go figure out how to find it. I have to stick with it. Like no one wants to admit that they don't know. Like no one wants to sit at a table. I was on a call the other day with a client and he's like, it's okay that you don't know the answer to this. And I was like, no, it's not. It's not okay that I don't answer this. Like I got me and then I had to be like, okay, self, why is that happening? And then I think the last one is know your triggers. So like I shared the story about the phone on top of my car and flying off onto Route 7 and like smashing in a million pieces. I know when I have too many pens on my desk, I'm all over the place, right?
Interesting.
So pay attention to when at the end of the day you start to feel bad. One of the tricks I use, it's an app, it's called Evaluation Wheel. And you can name the categories. It's called the Wheel of Life in positive psychology land, but you can name the circles. And then on those circles, every week I measure how I'm doing. So I measure how I'm doing with my business. I measure how I'm doing with my kids. I measure how, did I exercise? Did I meditate and breathe? Am I hitting my values? In the words, I have a core desired feeling set that I work from. Like, I know what those are. Like, am I doing those things? And I let myself on Friday, it takes 5 minutes. I measure each of those things. And I'm like, okay, how does this compare? And I actually have been doing it for like 4 years. And I have a whole album on my phone that goes through everyone. And so if nothing else, just try a little tweak, right? Try a little
Yeah.
thing that helps your day. And that one holds me accountable to myself and what I care about.
I love that. I mean, it's the same thing where you talked about inviting in curiosity, like become curious about yourself, like notice your patterns, notice your the pieces, because that is like when I think about a change that I would take away from what we've talked about is like where do I know the feeling in my body, that sticky, like, the frustration. I kind of tense up, my stomach gets tight, my shoulders get tight, and I my furrow my brow. Like those are my like physical outward figures of like I'm frustrated with this something. And then
Mhm.
if I can pay attention to it and notice it, and that's the biggest piece. That's so hard to do. Then I can maybe do something about it. But I love the evaluation wheel too, which just kind of, it almost forces that needle, right? Like
Yep.
let's pay attention now.
Let's pay
Um,
attention. And I change it sometimes. Like I've had different categories over time. And then I think the last one is who are your people that will call you out, right? So on when you're misbehaving, to who you want to be. Like none of us, again, who will call you out? It doesn't have to be a coworker. Like I was telling the same story over and over again to my sister, and my sister is the funniest human being alive, and she's like we're similar, very opposite. Like she's very like she will tell you how it is, and I kept telling her the same story. And she's like, why are you letting this person ruin every day? She's like,
yeah.
I'll listen to you as long as you want, but I just need to ask you like why that's happening. And so having those people in your life who can like, because the people who are going to like tell you you're amazing and wonderful, and the people
Sure.
who are going to call you out. So
Yeah.
who's that person who's going to call you out no matter what in a loving way? She was doing it from a place of love. And I was like, why am I doing this?
That
And it
is nice.
like completely shifted, right?
Yeah. That's so great. That's really key. All right, so we're nearing the end. I can't believe it. You and I
I
could talk
hate
about this
hearing
all
the
day.
end, Leah.
It just happens.
Mm.
What is, if one thing is always, I always ask this question at the end, but if you could say a single thing that I want everyone on this call, everyone watching this recording to remember from today, what would it be?
I had written something else down when we started talking about these questions, but as we've been talking, I think it's that the sun's going to rise tomorrow. Like, no matter what happens, no matter how much you think this is the most important thing, like, sun's going to rise tomorrow and you're going to be okay. And
Yeah.
there are bigger things to be scared of. There are bigger things that are happening in the world or in our lives, and stuff happens. But for most of us, the day-to-day stuff that can get us just like spinning in our heads or problems we can solve, it's just going to be okay.
Mhm.
And all these tools are just meant to help you do your work better in the world, but you've got it in you. That resilience is not, it's a through line of, yeah, I'm going to be okay no matter what. And my husband and I talk a lot about like kids, and you're little, you get a splinter, you're crying. Now as our kids get bigger, big kids, bigger problems, right? Like, where are those things, and how are we teaching them how to bounce back from it instead of like wallowing in it? Or what do you
Let it
need to
take it
know
down.
that take it down, and it will still be there. The problem will still be there in the morning. Like, it will still exist. Sometimes you get fired, you move on, someone quits, someone leaves, there'll be another job, another thing you can go do in the world. So, I think, and I know it's not easy to get a job and it's not easy to do some of this, and some of these decisions are really, really hard. But I think the more you practice the muscle of like moving yourself through them, the more likely you are to be able to do it the next time.
Which is truly resilience. That's like the
Mhm.
definition of resilience, is we're just strengthening the muscle over and over again and trying to recognize and notice that nothing is ever as good or as bad as it
Yeah.
seems. We're,
Yeah.
we're
Ever.
just in here together.
Yeah.
Erin, this was such a wonderful conversation. It
Thank
was so,
you.
so
It
good to
was
have
so
you.
fun.
Like I said,
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I know we have a worksheet that you can send out. It's called
I
Less
put that in the
Grit.
chat. Actually, it's
Awesome.
over here. Is there anything you want to say about that
No,
worksheet?
just
What
take
are
a
we
look
calling
at
it?
it.
Less grit worksheet.
Less grit, more support. So it's 5-minute resilience check for nonprofits. Print it out, use it. Let me know if you find anything cool. I know my email's at the end of this, so if you want to
Right
share,
here.
happy to chat. I love this stuff, as anyone in my life will tell you. But thank you for
I
letting me
can
come play
attest
and
to
talk
that.
about this stuff.
Erin, this was incredible, wonderful, like I said, and I can't think of a better way to kick off the year. in like, the nonprofit arena right now is weird. It's difficult. It's changing. It's changing at a rapid pace. And we all need to cultivate curiosity and a bit of resilience to make it through. Okay, I have Erin's information up on the screen. I hope that you will reach out to her with any questions. You're also obviously at any time welcome to reach out to me, Leya at BetterUnite.com. If you've got questions about Better Unite, of course, support at BetterUnite.com will point you in the right place. Next week, I am going to be joined by Laura Hutira. She is with MGale and they're a consultancy. She will talk about cultivating generosity, nurturing a culture of philanthropy for nonprofit success. She works a lot with the Giving Institute and Giving USA data. So this should be a really, really fascinating talk. She actually spoke about this at a Better conference back in September. It's very exciting. I can't wait to be joined by Laura. And one last final little plug for Better Unite. If you've been hearing us talk about Better Unite, event software, moves management, all of the pieces, systems, Better Unite is one of those. Let us show you around, scan the QR code or email support at betterunite.com to take a look. Erin, again, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for joining me today. Everybody here, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us. I hope you all have a wonderful day, week, morning, if you're like me and in Australia. And finally, for 2026, let's go do some good. Bye, everyone.